Hello YouTube, it's Accurate again, back with a new video, and in this one I think it's about time to make a comparison between the MPC Live and Maschine MK3. But before we get into the video, I just want to mention that I don't get paid to do this, not by Akai, not by Native Instruments. Even though I know people at both companies, this video is just 100% because you guys asked me to do this. And when I see something that frequently in the comments, of course I'm gonna try to make a video on it. I've also thought a little bit about this video and decided to divide it in different parts, and you should be able to find the time codes in the comment section below if you want to jump straight to a specific part. Because this video might be a little long, I guess. 1. Basic history and a definition of what the two units actually are. 2. Hardware. 3. Workflow, usability, and 4. Some kind of conclusion and my personal opinions about them. And that's basically this video, right? I'm not going to focus a lot on the software sides of things, and I'm not going to talk a lot about how they integrate with other DAWs or anything like that, because that's normally stuff that I don't do a lot. Now, if you haven't seen any of my videos before, I can tell you that I'm pretty big on sampling. I'm a sample-based boom bap beat maker, and I release my music as instrumentals as they are. I do a little bit of scratching on top of them, but that's pretty much what I do. I love synthesizers and I use them a lot in my music, but the foundation of my tracks almost always contains of samples, drums, and a bass line. And that's what I use my Maschine or my MPC for. Sure, it's really important that a device like this works well with third-party plugins and software instruments and stuff, but in this video we're not going to talk much about that. So let's go into part 1, history and definition of the different lines. So when I'm talking to anyone else in the hip-hop realm and I mention the MPC, everyone thinks about the MPC 60, the MPC 2000 XL, maybe the MPC 5000 or the 2500, something like that. All of those units were standalone samplers with sequencers and built-in audio functionality, both in and out. These are really classic samplers, or drum machines, or whatever you want to call them, and they've been used by legends in the hip-hop world. Some of them just used the internal storage, some of them could read floppy disks or zip drives later on, but normally they were kind of limited when it comes to megabyte, and that transfers to seconds in sampling. The old MPCs all had a signature specific sound and a certain type of swing to the sequencer, considered to be special and unique to a lot of producers. A lot of things happened with the Akai brand and the company behind Akai, but the MPC line of products were pretty much dead for a while. Now, I might be wrong here, but I think it was in 2013 they came out with the MPC software, together with a bunch of controllers. The MPC Renaissance, the MPC Studio, the MPC Element, and later on the MPC Touch. So now we're talking about hardware connected to software, so you needed to be connected to a computer. Some of the controllers had an audio interface and some of them didn't, which basically means a big change for the MPC series of products. Again, a couple of years went by and they released the MPC X and the MPC Live, which I have right here. The design of MPC Live is pretty much exactly the same layout as the MPC Touch, but it's a little bit bigger because it's also capable of running in standalone mode. And that's where we are today with the MPCs. Standalone devices able to run in standalone mode without a computer, but could also be connected through USB to the computer and running together with the MPC software. Two worlds combined, hardware and software, standalone and software integration. Cool, now let's take a look at Maschine instead. Now, Maschine is a line of products that comes from the company Native Instruments. Native Instruments was originally known for their software sampler, Contact, their software drum machine, Battery, their sample packs and VST effects and stuff. Later on they came out with a DJ software called Tractor, together with a bunch of hardware controllers for that, as well as the first machine, the Maschine MK1. Then the Maschine Micro came out, then Maschine MK2, Maschine Studio, Maschine Jam came out, and finally Maschine MK or MK3. All of the products in the Maschine family are controllers for Mac or PC and runs the Maschine software on the computer. You could run a Maschine controller in MIDI mode and control something else than the Maschine software, but you always need to have it connected to a computer or something that can receive a MIDI signal in the right way. Sampling audio, sequencing stuff, laying out beats, hitting drum pads and everything. It's all 100% connected to the Maschine software if we're talking about the Maschine products. One of the really big additions with the Maschine MK3 is that it has an integrated audio interface for the first time. But it still needs the software to be able to speak a language that the computer understands. So if you plug in an audio source in the back of your Maschine MK3, you will be able to sample that sound and sequence it and make a track out of it. But it will actually be the computer that handles all of the audio, because it's just an audio interface inside the MK3, nothing else. And that's a really big difference between these two devices. The Maschine MK3 is pretty much just a controller that controls an excellent piece of software on your PC or Mac. And the MPC Live, on the other hand, is exactly the same thing, but with another software, plus it works in standalone mode, without a computer. Now let's move along from part 1 to part 2 of this video, and let's talk a bit more about the hardware. So here they are, set up next to each other. Both of them are based on a 4x4 grid of 16 drum pads. Besides from that, Maschine has 58 other buttons, these 8 knobs as well as this main one. While the MPC has 22 other buttons, 4 knobs plus a main one, and the big difference here, it also comes with a really great and responsive touchscreen. This makes a big difference when it comes to functionality. Pretty much everything is accessible through the touchscreen: step sequencing, effect editing, sample editing, mixing, muting, effect sense, browsing through sounds, samples, instruments, projects. Everything is right on the touchscreen. Now, the Maschine controller has 2 pretty large screens, but this has no touchscreens at all. You do everything with the knobs and the buttons on the controller. Browsing for sounds or groups or samples or whatever is done from the controller. The same goes for the mixer, sample editing, arranging and editing notes, and also step sequencing. The Maschine controller also has this little touch bar you can use for pitch bending, adjusting modulation, or perform effects on top of things. So basically, the Maschine controller has more dedicated buttons and knobs to make everything accessible and editable, but the MPC Live instead uses the touchscreen for many of those functions. Now let's turn them around and take a look at the connections. Starting with the Maschine controller, the basic audio interface here gives you 2 mono inputs and outputs, a separate headphone output, a microphone input on a mono jack, as well as MIDI input and outputs on the normal big jacks, a pedal input, a USB connection, and the optional power input. And that's it. The MPC, on the other hand, gives you 3 pairs of mono outputs, as well as the headphone out. It has a dedicated phono input for your turntable and a screw to ground it. Other than that, it also has a normal line input on 2 mono jacks, 2 sets of MIDI in and outputs, and a slot for an SD card. The MPC also has 2 USB-A ports to connect USB keyboards or whatever you like, and these also functions as a USB hub when connected to the computer on the normal USB port next to them. So when we're talking about connectivity, the MPC has something that doesn't show on the front or the back of the unit, and that is the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity. I'm going to check that out more in detail in a future video, but that is something that really affects the MPC Live in a super awesome way. So I guess I should say something about the build quality of these units as well, but to be honest, there isn't really much to say. They're both of really high quality when it comes to pretty much everything. I like the buttons and the knobs a little bit more on the Maschine controller than I do on the MPC. Both the feeling when you press them and the overall look of them when they light up and stuff. The knobs are a little bit bigger on the MPC, and the resistance is actually less than it's on the Maschine controller. Since the MPC works in standalone mode as well, the overall footprint is bigger, it's a thicker device, and it weighs much more than the Maschine controller does. Another kind of important thing when it comes to the hardware is the difference of the pads between these 2 units. Both of them are made of some kind of rubber. To me personally, the Maschine pads feel better under my fingers, but the pads on the MPC is way more velocity sensitive and has a better range in the sensitivity. Design-wise, I think I like the look of the thick MPC pads a little bit more. And I do have a small, tiny little problem with the pads on the MPC being black like that, because that collects dust like nothing else, even though I actually play them every day. So, a tiny little thing. Moving along, we have now reached part 3 of this one, so let's talk about workflow or functionality. I want to be clear here, talking about workflow and functionality of two different products. This is a really subjective matter. What I consider a good workflow might be a bad workflow for you, and it's all about how you think about music and how you're used to producing. Where do you come from? What kind of music are you making? What's most important for you in a product like this? It's all very subjective. I have friends that have worked with MPCs since pretty much the 90s, and for them, Maschine is just awkward and weird to work with. Me, I'm quite the opposite of that. I've been using Maschine since Maschine Mark 1 came out, and I'm new to the MPC workflow. One thing you might not know if you haven't tried both of them a lot is that they are actually more similar than you think at first. Sequencing a track in Maschine contains of different patterns in scenes, and the scene is like a part of a song, and you can then arrange different scenes in different orders containing of different patterns. That might be kind of complicated if you haven't used the system before and you don't understand how it all fits together. But in the MPC world and the MPC Live, you're using sequences, programs and tracks to make your songs. I think it's easier to arrange a full song from A to Z on the MPC than it is on Maschine because of the pattern system. And even though Maschine has implemented a new workflow for working with audio, it's just not as seamlessly working as it is in the Maschine software/hardware. A really important thing for me when I make music is that I can get an idea and just capture that idea quick and easy on whatever controller or software I'm using at the moment. And I am way faster working on Maschine than I am on the MPC. And that has much more to do with me and who I am and how I'm working than the MPC itself. I enjoy utilizing my muscle memory a lot when I make music. I know that I'm gonna hit this button twice and then I'm on that page and I can adjust this thing on this knob right here. And that works really good with the Maschine hardware. I don't need to look at the computer screen, I don't need to look on the screens on the Maschine controller either. I just know where stuff are. 2 clicks here, 1 click there, go back and forth, this one does that, and it's really fast like that. On the other hand, you can actually access more things and more quickly on the MPC because of the touchscreen. For instance, I know that I have to hit Shift, Browse and Knob 8 on Maschine to be able to change my effects. But if I'm in the main menu of the MPC, I can just hit the little symbol on the touchscreen that says Effect, and I'm right there. If I want to fine-tune the start and end point of a sample, in Maschine I can do that with 2 different knobs at the same time. And if I want to do the same thing on the MPC, I need to go to the sample edit page, and then I have 2 small handles that I can adjust the start and end points with my fingers. And if I want to fine-tune anything, I can just zoom in and use one of the 4 knobs on the right side of the unit. Simple as that. When it comes to editing MIDI notes and such, the MPC Live just makes it ridiculously simple. I just go here, I pick the little magnifying glass, I'm able to zoom in and out, go wherever I want, I can pick whatever notes I want, delete them, paint new ones in there. It's just super simple. And if I want to do something similar on the Maschine hardware, I'll have to go in here, I have to pick a specific note, or 2 of them, then I'll have to choose a range of notes, mark them like that, delete them, and record new ones in there. It's just not as simple. So the touchscreen really helps in a situation like this. Now keep in mind that I'm a long-time Maschine user and pretty much new to the MPC workflow. But I've really spent the hours and tried to understand MPC Live as good as possible. And even though I'm not like 1000% sure here, I would say that the MPC Live is easier for a beginner to understand and get into. Working on a touchscreen comes naturally for pretty much every one of us who uses like a smartphone or an iPad. And since so many of the different functions are accessible through the touchscreen on the MPC Live, I think that really helps a new user straight out of the box. The fact that you can do everything on the unit and just forget about the software or even disconnect it to the computer makes it possible to just take your main device from your studio, go to, I don't know, a record store and sample records right off the bat, and that's super cool. There are things with the Maschine controller itself that I really like a lot. That might have a lot to do with the fact that I've been using it for years. But when I disconnect myself from the computer screen and just work on the unit, I just appreciate the tactile feedback that I get from the buttons more, I think, than I enjoy working on a touchscreen, I think. The MPC has more functions than the Maschine, and it's easier to connect to other type of gear. And no matter how many software updates there will be in the future, the MPC will always work as a standalone device as well. You can't take that away from it, and that's a big thing. There's definitely a learning curve with both of these machines, but let's go over to the last segment of this video, conclusion. But it is kind of crazy when you think about it. A device like the MPC Live or the Maschine MK3 can be used for almost everything. In this case, it has to be connected to a computer and you need to work with it like that. And in this case, it doesn't even need to be connected to anything. You can just plug in a pair of headphones and work on an album, right on this one. Now, my home studio looks like this. I'm using the Maschine MK3 pretty much as the center of the entire setup. I know that workflow by heart pretty well, so I don't want to change that out and become slower in my music making. Everything is connected so I can sample anything from Maschine on the MPC and anything from the MPC onto Maschine. But there are a lot of things the MPC actually does better. The stock sounds that comes with the MPC Live, that's way better than the sounds that comes with Maschine. That's just my subjective opinion about the sound and the quality and how usable they are. But that's it. And by the way, don't think too much about the stock sounds either, because sample your own sounds. Get your own sounds from other places and make it sound like you instead of just the library. Also, this whole system for using effects and applying them with an X and Y pad, how awesome is that? If I'm going on a vacation, of course I'm bringing the MPC Live with me, because I don't even need to think about the computer. Just this one, a pair of headphones, and I'm working on my music, on my instrument, just like that. If I'm working on my tracks here in the home studio, I'm gonna be able to use the Maschine and this one as well. But if you're completely new to making music and you wonder what you should buy, the MPC or the Maschine, I'm sorry, but I can't give you a bulletproof answer here. Both of the devices are super awesome when it comes to making beats. And for what I do, a lot of sample-based music, I think they're equally good. When I posted on Instagram that I was making this video, I got some questions. This is one of them. And I think that's a really good question. Which one is more fun to use? And I would say the MPC is more fun for me right now because it's still kind of new to me and the whole touchscreen thing is kind of cool. I really enjoy learning new pieces of gear, so this still is a lot of fun for me right now. But if I hear a sample today and I think, oh, okay, I can chop that up in this certain specific type of way, then I would definitely go for the Maschine because I'm way faster and I know it by heart, and I think that's the most important thing to take away from this. I can't really recommend anything over something else right now because the MPC Live is great, the Maschine MK3 is great, the Ableton Push is great, the circuit is great, the Electron Digitact is great, the OP1 is great. There's always pros and cons with everything. One part of me loves the touchscreen on the MPC, another part really don't like it as much. I love that it's standalone, but here in the studio it doesn't really matter. Just to mention something real quick about the software. I think the software for Maschine is a little bit easier on the eyes and not as crowded as the interface for the MPC software. But again, that's really subjective on my part. I've used the Maschine software a lot more than the MPC software. I also want to mention the NKS standard, where everything just lays out better on Maschine than they do on the MPC when it comes to integrating external software synthesizers and stuff. Sure, it makes a lot of sense to actually use the computer screen and the interface for the plugin if you're using the plugin, but with Maschine I think it's just integrated a little bit better on the controller itself. Now, even though I really can't say that one beats the other in one specific type of scenario, I really hope you got something out of this video. I know a lot of you people care more about the stock sounds than I do, and you want to know what they come with and how the drum sounds and how everything works like that. And I might make another video on that if you just ask me away in the comment section. But again, I hope you learned something from this video. I know that I'm going to use both of them as much as possible in my day-to-day beat making, and you're going to see both of them on this YouTube channel a lot. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't think choosing the right gear is always the most important thing. A lot of devices do pretty much the same thing on different kind of ways. And if you're looking to get into production, just set your mind to something. Decide, I'm a person who's gonna work with Logic or with the MPC Live or the Push or the Maschine. Make the choice, make sure you put all the hours and all the work in there that's necessary. Master that thing, and next step, world domination. This is my longest YouTube video by far, not counting the live streams and stuff. So if you're still here watching, thanks a lot. Make sure to check out the links down below. I have a Patreon page, a website, some music on Spotify and stuff. I'm gonna try to answer as many comments and questions in the comments as possible. Thanks a lot for being here. Thanks for supporting the channel. I hope I'm gonna see you in the next video. Bye now.
Accurate beats.